Imagine a world lit by candlelight. There are no light bulbs or electric streetlights, no phones ringing or televisions playing your favorite shows. This was the world in 1856, the year the scientist Nikola Tesla was born. Tesla grew up during a time very different from today. When he was a kid, there were no telephones or computers. In cities, there were no trolleys or buses. Most people still traveled by stagecoach. And at night, homes and streets were lit by gaslight. But as Tesla grew into a young man, all this changed because of one thing: electricity. And Tesla would use this new invention to help light the world. Today, Tesla is one of the most celebrated scientists in history. Using his powerful imagination, he built incredible machines and dreamed up extraordinary inventions. This is the story of how Nikola Tesla became the inventor of a whole new age, the age of electricity.
Historians, welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. This story is electrifying, so buckle up as we head back in time to learn about one of the most incredible inventors to ever live. In fact, the entire experience of making and listening to this podcast can be traced back to Nikola Tesla. Without his breakthroughs in electricity, the world would be a much different place. We'll start by learning about Tesla when he was a boy, around the same age as many of you. And then we'll learn about some of his amazing inventions. So let's get started.
Our story begins sometime in the 1860s. Nikola Tesla was just a boy and lived in the small village of Smiljan in modern-day Croatia. Tesla looked up and saw the white church near his family's farm and could hear the trickling of a stream nearby. In the distance, he heard the soft coo of pigeons and baa of sheep. Tesla loved to wander the farm with the pigeons, sheep, and chickens, but his favorite animal was his black cat called Matzak. Matzak followed Tesla everywhere. One day, Tesla was sitting with Matzak inside his home. He began to stroke the cat's shiny black fur and noticed something extraordinary. As I stroked Matzak's back, I saw a miracle that made me speechless with amazement. Matzak's back was a sheet of light, and my hand produced a shower of sparks loud enough to be heard all over the house, Tesla remembered. Have you ever rubbed a balloon on your head and noticed that it sticks to your hair? Have you ever touched someone and felt a slight shock? That's static electricity. That's exactly what Tesla saw when he pet his cat. He just didn't know this yet. Tesla immediately ran over to his father to ask him about the mysterious sparks. Well, this is nothing but electricity. The same thing we see through the trees on the store, his father replied. Tesla's mind began racing with questions and ideas. So these sparks were similar to the lightning he saw during a thunderstorm. He couldn't believe it. He began to wonder what would happen if there was a gigantic cat, a cat that someone would stroke to produce tons of sparks. From that day on, Tesla would start asking an important question. What is electricity? And he would never stop asking. From a young age, Tesla had an incredible imagination, though you could say it was a little too incredible. Sometimes he couldn't tell the difference between real life and things he made up in his head. When a word was spoken to me, the image of the objects designated would present themselves vividly to my vision, and sometimes I was quite unable to distinguish between what was tangible or not, Tesla explained. He could picture things in his mind so perfectly that they seemed real. Sometimes when he saw things, he also saw strange flashes of light. It made it hard to focus. But this imagination would help him dream up amazing inventions. And he had his mother to thank. Growing up, Tesla watched her create all sorts of devices for their home. It inspired him. My mother was an inventor of the first order, he said. She invented and constructed all kinds of tools and devices and wove the finest designs from thread. And his mother never stopped working from daybreak until nightfall. Her hands were busy at work creating. Following his mother's example, Tesla began inventing too. As a kid, he tried to make a tiny flying machine using June bugs to power the rotors. Can you imagine? A tiny helicopter with bugs as the propellers. He designed a wooden sword and pretended to be a Serbian warrior. That was a much easier invention. As he got older, he started to take apart mechanical clocks and put them back together. He wasn't always successful, but he got better each time he tried. But when Tesla was 5 years old, something very hard happened to his family. His older brother died in an accident. A year later, Tesla and his family decided to move to another town for a fresh start. This was a very difficult time for Tesla and his family. Tesla loved his old village near the stream, and he missed his brother. Tesla didn't talk very much and became very shy. But one day, something happened that forced him to come out of his shell. The local fire department had just gotten a shiny new fire engine. Now, this fire engine was a bit different from the fire trucks you'd see today. For one thing, it was pulled by men or horses. The fire department wanted to show off their new machine and decided to put on a demonstration. They paraded the red and black engine through the streets and then marched down to the river. When they got to the river, the firemen unraveled the long hose and placed one end into the water. 16 men pumped the handles of the engine up and down. Everyone waited with excitement, but nothing happened. No water came out of the hose. Tesla suspected what the problem might be. He waded into the river and found a kink in the hose. Soon, water started gushing out. The crowd began to cheer. I was carried on the shoulders and was the hero of the day, Tesla remembered. At that moment, Tesla realized something. Using his mind, he could solve problems to help people. That's when he started to think maybe he should become an engineer. But if he wanted to become an engineer, first he would have to convince his family. Tesla's father was an Orthodox priest and wanted Tesla to follow in his footsteps. It was going to take a miracle to change his father's mind. And that's exactly what happened. When Tesla was a teenager, a deadly disease called cholera spread to his small village. It wasn't long before Tesla began to feel unwell. The doctor arrived at his home and knew instantly. Tesla was sick with cholera. He remained in his bed for 9 months, and all this time he didn't seem to be getting better. His family didn't know what to do. One evening, Tesla called his father over to his bedside. "Perhaps I may get well if you let me study engineering," he said. His father was desperate for his son to get better, so he agreed. He promised to send Tesla to the best technical school in the country. Slowly, Tesla did get better, and his father kept his promise. In 1875, Tesla attended the Imperial Royal Technical College in Graz. There, he became even more fascinated by electricity. He wowed his professors with his ideas and scored high marks on his exams. "During the whole first year, I regularly started my work at 3 o'clock in the morning and continued until 11 at night," he said. But by the third year, Tesla was struggling to pass his classes. He left before graduating.
Hi, young historians! Time for a quick break from this amazing story to tell you a bit more about Honest History. If you're enjoying this episode, then you'll love Honest History's magazines and books. Each one is filled with important adventures through the past, like the story of Cheng Yi Sao, a Chinese woman who commanded one of the largest pirate fleets in history, to Mansa Musa from Africa, one of the wealthiest people to ever live. You can pick up a copy or subscribe and receive 3 issues delivered straight to your doorstep every 3 months. Just go to honesthistory.com honesthistory.co and use code AnyTimeNow for a 10% discount. That's honesthistory.co and special promo code AnyTimeNow. Okay, let's get back to the story.
The next few years were difficult for Tesla. He jumped around, studying and trying to find work. Finally, he got a job at a telegraph company in Hungary, where he became the chief electrician. Showing his talent, Tesla helped improve different devices and parts of telephones. But his big break would come much later. In 1884, Tesla was 27 years old when he moved to the United States. He was going to work for Edison Machine Works in New York City. This was the company of the American inventor Thomas Edison. Maybe you've heard of him. Edison's company would become famous for selling the first light bulbs. Tesla stepped off the boat in New York, not knowing what to expect. New York City was nothing like the small village Tesla grew up in. He had been in cities before, but this was different. In New York, Tesla could feel the world changing all around him. There was a brand new railway raised up above the street. He wandered past construction sites where new buildings were being constructed. He watched workers in the distance as they built giant bridges suspended over miles of water. It was an exciting time to be in the United States as a scientist. Businessmen were creating new electrical companies. Soon these companies began competing with each other to invent the latest and greatest electrical machines. Tesla worked very hard for Edison's company. He was in the office for hours and hours trying to help design a new way to light up the city streets. But Tesla was frustrated. He didn't feel like his ideas were being heard, and he wasn't receiving the salary he felt he deserved. Within 6 months, he quit. "Goodbye to the Edison Machine Works," he wrote in his diary. With a notebook full of ideas, Tesla set out to make his own way. He didn't want to just work for a company, he wanted to invent. By 1888, Tesla had developed one of his most famous inventions that we still use today. It is called alternating current, or AC for short. Using his own motors, generators, and transformers, Tesla created a whole new way to make electricity. Here's a quick science lesson. AC uses an electric current that switches back and forth. This is very important. It meant that Tesla could send electricity even farther than before. Most importantly, Tesla's AC system could be used to light up entire cities and towns from just one power station. To the everyday person, Tesla's invention seemed like magic. He could light up light bulbs without wires. He could illuminate glass tubes just by touching them. Newspaper articles called him an electrical magician and a genius. But Tesla was just showing how electricity can pass through the air without wires. Today, there are many devices that are wireless. Just think about Wi-Fi. You can browse the internet without having to worry about tripping over a wire. You can send a text message to someone in another country or see them on video, all without a wire. This wasn't possible when Tesla was alive. And this is what Tesla was most interested in. He wanted to figure out how he could move electricity around the world without using wires. So he began building a top-secret lab for all his experiments. The laboratory was hidden away in the mountains of Colorado, where he had plenty of space to invent. Inside a large barn, Tesla created his famous experimental station. To stop kids from snooping on his work, he built a fence around the barn with signs that read, "Keep out." Inside, Tesla built giant coils that generated sparks of electricity. Each day, he recorded and studied what he discovered. It was here that he made what he believed was his most important discovery, something called terrestrial stationary waves. He learned that the Earth itself could be used to move electricity. Tesla would continue to experiment with wireless power. He studied radios and built a radio-controlled boat. Today, we use his technology to power drones. He also built a speedometer. This is the device that tells you how fast a car is driving. During his life, Tesla obtained over 300 patents for his inventions. He published books and articles about science and his life. He built friendships with famous American novelists and poets. Seldom did one meet a scientist or engineer who was also a poet, a philosopher, an appreciator of fine music, a linguist, and a connoisseur of food and drink, one friend said. He was a man of many talents, but throughout his life, Tesla struggled to make a living. Many of his ideas were taken by companies, and he had to fight to get paid for his own inventions. Even today, historians wonder how much more Tesla would have been able to create if he were given the support and money he deserved. His notebooks were filled with inventions, all created in his incredible imagination. Nikola Tesla lived until the age of 81. During his long life, he saw the world completely change through the power of electricity, and was one of the scientists who made all this change possible. Even as a boy, it had been clear Tesla was destined for something greater. Inspired by his mother, he dreamed up things no one else dared to dream. All the while, he was always fascinated by that one question: what is electricity? Is there a question that fascinates you? Don't be afraid to follow that curiosity. There are still so many questions we need to answer, and so many inventions we need to create. Just like Tesla, you can use your imagination to dream up things no one else has ever dreamed.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Anytime Now. We hope this episode inspired you as much as it did us. We're sure you have lots of questions, and that's great. Now you can go out and do your own research to learn more about Tesla and his inventions. Another great place to learn more is in issue 3 of Honest History magazine, where we dive into the story of Tesla and Edison. Also, if this is your first time listening to our show, be sure to check out some of our previous episodes for more fascinating stories from history. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. This episode was hosted by James Adomian and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Randall Lawrence and Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about this episode, including more about the host, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media at Honest History.
When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's Honest History.